Somebody once said way back when that whenever a guy with an Excel spreadsheet walks into an R&D department, innovation walks out the other side. And I think there's a lot to it. You can't command innovations, right? So you have to approach it in a very different way. And I've seen it so many times how investors and MBA guys with their spreadsheets want to manage. We can't just spend money willy-nilly, which is true. You can't, right? You have to be smart about how you spend your money. But if you start managing innovation teams in some sort of a regular traditional business model, forget it. It's not going to work. It's not going to happen. You need chaos. You need structured chaos.
Welcome to the Pivotal Leader Podcast with Gina Trimarco, featuring lively interviews with CEOs, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who share their stories and best practices for shifting business from problems to profits. Sit back and get ready to pivot.
Hey everyone, this is Gina Trimarco, Chief Results Officer of Pivot 10 Results, a strategy and training company that helps businesses shift from people problems to performance results. Each week on The Pivotal Leader, I feature inspirational leaders who know how to positively impact their customers, employees, and brands through culture building. And if you're looking for a podcast that dives deeper into sales and revenue generation, especially as a woman, check out a new podcast I co-host called Women Your Mother Warned You About, the podcast that makes sales sexy again, and is a member of the Seller Die Network, produced by sales experts Jeffrey Gittimer and Jennifer Gluckow. Check it out at womenyourmotherwarnedyouabout.com. But on to this episode of The Pivotal Leader, I interviewed Bjorn Oste, co-founder and CEO of Good Idea Drinks. Good Idea, also known as the Swedish Sugar Buster, is a sugar and sweetener-free flavored carbonated water that helps people with normal blood sugar levels handle the blood sugar spikes following a meal. Prior to Good Idea, he co-founded Oatly, 100% oat-based milk, sold in over 25 countries, including North America, Europe, and Asia, with his nutrition professor brother as co-founder. He also co-founded Aventure AB, a research-based company specializing in the development of advanced and functional food concepts. Their purpose is to develop attractive food products with preventative properties that make it easier for people to move towards a healthier lifestyle. It's a totally new approach, and they chose the U.S. as their first market for obvious reasons. Lifestyle-related diseases such as type 2 diabetes, obesity, and CVD are skyrocketing, and they see a real need of changing the paradigm from cure and treatment to protection and prevention by lifestyle change. And prior to this, he co-founded Dynasoft, a world leader in specialized complex computer security systems for global banks, blue chip companies, and governments. So let's listen in and learn from Bjorn. Well, I am excited to say welcome to you, Bjorn Oste, to the Pivotal Leader. How'd I do?
You did really well. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. Well, I mean, the most exciting part to me is getting your name right. So
I might take another few podcasts. But,
okay. Well, I was close. So let's jump right in. So many questions I have for you. You know, everything I've read about you, read about your background, it sounds like you're probably one of the most serial entrepreneurs with such a background in multiple business startups. What do you Are you exhausted? Because you've done a lot.
Well, it's interesting. This is obviously a great question, right? And I look at my resume or my LinkedIn profile, and it's easy to think like, wait a minute. But there's actually logic to it behind it, and I guess ultimately it's a question of what is a company ultimately. And I think there's a big shift in the world going on here. And I think, today you see what's been happening the last 20, 30 years in the tech industry started, I guess. Somebody came up with a great idea. They raised some cash. They coded whatever they were coding quickly and sold it and made mega bucks. And what did they do after selling that company? They went back and they started all over again and made even bigger truckload of cash. And then maybe they had so much cash that they actually started investing in other entrepreneurs doing the same thing. But what it's kind of happening here is that you have an engine that produces products. And in this case, the product may be a company, not just a product, right? But you keep your network, you keep your friends, your contacts, and your skill sets. Your access to the market, your access to capital. So you create a nucleus of competence that is ultimately the product or the company that's you. I mean, I was just listening to some news last week about General Electric and how sad it is about this mega company that's been around for 2 million years, and it's sort of this bedrock, this pillar of our society, and are struggling, right? And this is sort of the traditional way of looking at companies. I believe is to look at them as this sort of thing that is around forever. And therefore, if you have that approach, how can you start and sell companies? And so in some ways, when you start looking at it in a different way, the thing I have is my network and my connections, and then the company becomes sort of a byproduct in some sense. In my particular case, my journey into mass entrepreneurship started with me teaming up about 20 years ago with my brother, at that time a professor in food chemistry at the university in the south of Lund in Sweden, where I'm from. I'm going to let you come back. I know you have other questions on the details there, but it's sort of what we've created is an innovation vehicle where we invent new food products. Mm-hmm. And when we have a new product, we put it in a company, and it becomes a company. And then you can have, you start hiring people that manage that particular business, and you fund that particular business. But we sit behind, and we are involved in a lot of different boxes on a org chart, if you like. And we absolutely create those things, right? So yeah, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've created a lot of companies. I haven't run all of these companies, right? I've been developing the strategy for them. I've funded them or been working in the team that put together the funding, whether it's our own or external and whatnot. So I don't know if this answers your question but this is sort of the world according to me in some sense, right? I don't necessarily look at companies as this sort of everlasting things. They are just components.
Yeah, and it sounds like that one thing leads to the next thing, leads to the next thing, leads to the next thing.
Well, it totally, absolutely.
And it sounds like you're also more of the visionary than the implementer. So you're the one who sounds like you have a lot of the ideas, and through all this, you've also been able to build up enough capital to then make those ideas happen, and then they give birth to more ideas, and that's what it sounds like you're doing, which sounds like a lot of fun.
It is. I think I have a lot of fun, and in my team we have a lot of fun, and I think it's sort of the challenge has been to create an environment where innovation. We will lead by innovation, and I remember in my very early days I worked for a very large company, traditional large, called Ericsson at that time, one of the leaders in telephony and different types of technologies, right? And they spent a lot of money on R&D, and when you looked at how that worked, like it does at General Electric or Nestle or any big food company, any big company of any sort, it's sort of you have R&D departments, but it's very structured. And somebody once said way back when that whenever a guy with an Excel spreadsheet walks into an R&D department, innovation walks out the other side. And I think there's a lot to it. You can't command innovations, right? So you have to approach it in a very different way. And I've seen it so many times how investors and MBA guys with their spreadsheets want to manage. Oh, we can't just spend money willy-nilly, which is true. You can't, right? You have to be smart about how you spend your money. But if you start managing innovation teams in some sort of a regular traditional business model, forget it. It's not going to work. It's not going to happen. You need chaos. You need structured chaos, and you need freedom. And if you can figure out that formula, which I think in many ways we have, you can create a lot of stuff, right?
Okay, well now you really got me, piqued my interest, because I work in a very creative world, and I believe in the chaos of of creativity and innovation. What do you think has helped you create that structured chaos for a company that is trying to be more innovative? And you've said like they can't command innovation. What are some of the things that have worked for you to create that kind of a culture, or encourage that kind of a culture of structured chaos?
Well, when you put the question that way, I had to sit back and think. It sort of come very naturally to us, I think. But I mean, it's my brother is a very accomplished scientist with an academic background. And again, when I started working with him, he was a professor at Lund University, right? But all through his career, it's been about research and curiosity. Let the curiosity lead the scientists into new discoveries, right? And I started, as I said, working for a big corporation, Ericsson. I was in sales, and I did that for It was great. They had a lot of resources, and they sent me all over the world, and I was fresh out of school. So that was an incredible opportunity. But I also saw the bureaucracy and the hierarchy and the politics and the backstabbing and the classic stuff that comes with big organizations, right? And how stifling that was. And I, at that point, resigned and started with a couple of friends of mine. We started a software company, and I was the CEO the first year until I realized that I wasn't structured enough to really do that. I ran sales and marketing for what turned out to be a 10-year journey. And I think we learned a lot about creativity and how to, we were in computer security. I was a computer security nerd for 10 years. And lived ate and breathed cryptography and all kinds of cool technological stuff. But we really experimented a lot with that. How do we get these brilliant guys that we managed to attract and hire to excel and do what they're good at, and not just put them in a org chart and lock them up, right? Mm. And it was sort of one foot on the gas pedal and one foot on the brake kind of management situation. And we played around with that. We experimented. We ran the company over the cliff 3 times, I think. So we restarted the company 3 times, right? And the third time it really worked. And my brother, in some sense, was gripping with the same thoughts and ideas on his end, but we never talked about this. We didn't communicate about that particular aspect. It just happened naturally. And then he one day, when I sold my company, he had just developed and patented the first oat milk in the world. And we all thought that was just an outwardly crazy idea. It tasted really well, right? But most people, I couldn't even pronounce it right. They thought when I resigned, I sold my software company, moved to Boston in the U.S. to work with a new owner and integrate the business. And I had a senior position in a public company. It was a big eye-opening experience. But clearly also after 1 year, I realized that I'm not the corporate guy. It just doesn't work. And my brother had this idea and launched it, and I just felt fed up with the IT industry. I had a fantastic time there, and owe a lot to it. I learned so much, but I was kind of like, okay, time for the next rodeo, not something very different. I wanted to challenge myself, and so when I went and resigned, right, he had this patent. I resigned, and they all thought I said goat milk, as in the animal goat, right? And you could see their faces like, this guy, I clearly lost it somewhere, right? Giving up this incredible career to go milk some goats. So well, I think they over time realized that I wasn't milking goats. I was actually milking oats, and which is a whole different story.
And the company is called Oatly, correct?
The company today is Oatly, yes.
Oatly, okay.
And we launched in the US about 2 years ago, 2006. Okay. But when you start with something like that and you have a product and you realize that it's really a raw material, if you think about it, milk, it's a white product, and you do all kinds of stuff with it, right? All kinds of applications. So you got quickly into an environment there where it's all about like, okay, what do we do with this thing? It has incredible nutritional properties and it tastes really great, but people don't relate to it. They think it's an odd thing, and why bother in the first place? Because cow milk is so good anyway. I mean, bear in mind, we were in Sweden, which has among the lowest prevalence of lactose intolerance on the planet and among the highest per capita consumption of milk. So we weren't exactly.
Oh, wow. That's a great statistic.
Yeah. So we didn't exactly launch in a market that was exactly friendly and wide open and ready for a product like this. So we had to be super creative about how we, packaged it and what it was. And I think that sort of, we grew up in a world maturing in this particular industry, in a world where we were surrounded by big behemoth as incumbent organizations, whether they were dairy, whether they were retail, whether they were suppliers, manufacturers, the whole infrastructure there, and come and be a new guy with something completely new. Everything and everybody's against you.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, okay, well, we have to outsmart them then. And you try everything, right? Mm-hmm. And we realized that, wait a minute, we can do a little bit more research here. We can tweak this even more. We can get the fiber content up, and we can get even more effective cholesterol-lowering properties, and on it went, right? Back to your original question. I don't really have a good answer, but we've been fostered in a world where we've been, fighting the big incumbents all the time, and you have to just try new stuff, and you learn to not to be afraid of trying.
Maybe some of that stems back to, I'm a big believer in that upbringing and a culture and environment out, before you even got into the work world. If you were encouraged to be curious and resilient, I think and organically that that chaos can come about, and then you need someone really good to then help structure it and help.
It's fun you say that. It brings back another memory when I was at an entrepreneur meetup, a bunch of entrepreneurs 15, 20 years ago, 2 or 15, I don't know, 10, whatever. 100 years ago, back in the old world.
Yeah.
And after all the presentations and after dinner, and we're sitting down, 3 of us, and we've all done a couple of different companies and had a fair amount of shared success. And we discovered an interesting common trait. We were all the youngest of 4, which we thought that's kind of interesting after all. I don't know all that many that has 3 older siblings. Mm-hmm. But here we were, all 3 of us, and we started playing around with the ideas. And maybe when you grow up at that age, right, you have a lot of people around you that take care of you all the time. So fear is not necessarily concern. Cautiousness is not the first thing that comes to mind for that individual in that environment. Probably, possibly, right?
Yeah.
I guess maybe it's easier when you have that kind of upbringing to be more of a daredevil and more creative. And I don't know. I mean, psychologists may laugh, think I'm hysterical about it. But I thought it was just an interesting observation that 3 of us actually had that exact background. And the more I think about it, the more, first sibling tend to be more maybe intellectual, correct, but more cautious in many ways. I think I see that as a pattern, right? And then the more support you've had around you in your upbringing, maybe it's easier to be, what's the term, risk avert, right?
Yeah, right. I had this conversation with another CEO a couple weeks ago, and it's all, for him, his opinion was it was all about risk and being able to be willing to take risks. And I think it's part upbringing. I had parents who are like, you want to do something, go do it. And we're not going to tell you not to do it because you're just going to do it anyway. And
right,
you're going to learn. And so they fostered an environment of go figure it out. So there was that. And then as I went on through my life and career, when I discovered improv, the world of improv comedy and the skills that come from improv is about eliminating your fear of failure. And to instead,
I can totally see that.
It's we actually, we encourage failure because failure creates brand new ideas on stage.
I can see. Yeah.
So
interesting. Very interesting.
You can actually practice that. I've gotten so much better over the years. I mean, I already had it from the upbringing with my dad in particular, but when I added the improv thing to it and started living that world of improv, nothing scared me. Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? It doesn't work. I'll just get up and try something else. And
right.
I'm always in that mindset, but I do think that you can practice it. We've proven it. We've proven it through all the improv classes that we teach and the training that we do, that we can kind of rewire the mind a little bit into that positive thinking, I can do anything confidence thing. I know we've just gone off on a completely different tangent, but it's an
I'm sure that never happens in your interview.
Never. Got your brother in the mix of this, and Oatly came into it, and then that has moved into Good Idea Drinks.
Yeah. What happened? It was, we just talked about this whole thing with creating a room for innovation. So as we started developing the Oatly business, I mean, the company started in 94, 95, or the first patent was filed. And then at that time, I joined him in 97, and we didn't quite know what to do with it. And we were working as trying to sell this as an ingredient to major food players. And we had some early success with companies like Danone and others that helped us take some important development steps. But in 2001, we said enough with all that stuff. Let's launch our own brand. And that's when we created Oatly and just go after the consumer straight away. We need to be the masters of our own destiny. And you're not when you're a ingredient supplier or when you try to do other types of solutions, right? So a white label supplier, whatnot. So we developed the brand Oatly and started going after the market with that new product and educate the market that barely wasn't there, right? So we created something from scratch. And by 2006, a few years later, we came to a point where we had to build a new plant. So we had to bring in a bunch of external investors. And they all wanted to invest in the Oatly brand and the success of Oatly. But we had a fairly large portion of our spend in R&D. And that immediately caused frictions because we wanted to keep inventing, keep creating, and the investors said, well, wait a minute, we came in here to take this company to the market and build and develop this brand. It doesn't fit with R&D. So by 2008, we bought out the R&D unit and took it out of the company and created an entirely new innovation vehicle that is called Aventure. And Aventure is actually a play with words. It comes from Avena, which is oats in Latin. And obviously oats plus ventures. So that became a venture. In there, it was our own company. It was the two of us that owned it, and we created this environment to go bananas, basically, and just keep creating and inventing stuff. And that's sort of, in some sense, when people ask me, what company do I work for? Well, I work for a lot of companies. So it's kind of complicated to answer, right? But yes. The core of everything is that the mothership is a venture, and where we create and innovate, and I also want to add very important here is that we don't necessarily do all innovations in-house, but what we are really good at and we're really excelling at is to collaborate with research teams, scientists all over the planet. As an example, oat milk maize, when you look at the end product, it's kind of like the wheel, right? Mm-hmm. Well, it's pretty simple when you look at it, but it wasn't simple to get there, and it required a lot of multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary expertise. We talk about protein experts, we talk about enzyme technology, we talk about mechanical food processing, we had MDs and medicinal experts. We were looking at health aspects of maintaining the oat fiber to optimize the cholesterol lowering properties, for example. So Oatly today is extremely efficient at reducing cholesterol. It's sort of as a side note, right? But you add all these different components together, and you realize, it took all that to create what is then a simple thing with no additives and just plain oats and water. So the big learning there is that, of course, we can't have the best experts in the world on all these the different areas in-house. That's impossible. So we're really being good at developing where are the experts at resistant starch. Well, they may be sitting in somewhere in an agriculture university in the Midwest of the US, or and then we look at experts in organoleptic aspects, so taste, right? And that might be somewhere in Bordeaux or whatever, right? So I think that's part of the cracks, or the part of the secret sauce, is to have the ability to identify the experts and the ability to collaborate with them, which whenever you work with creative people, you realize, learn quickly that collaboration and mutual trust are things that are not coming naturally to all of them. So I think that's part of it. But we took our R&D unit out of Oatly and we created this innovation vehicle. And it's obvious then that we don't go invent willy-nilly all over the place. It's very natural that you work in the space where you have the connections, where you have the skills, where it's natural for you to operate. It kind of gives itself. Given the name Aventure was obviously in the beginning everything about oats. But one of the key aspects of oats is its incredible, I mentioned cholesterol. There are other inherent health benefits, all very helpful in the fight against what the medical world call the metabolic syndrome, right? Mm-hmm. The lifestyle diseases, so cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, etc. And that oats and oat fibers in particular have a huge role in that field. So when you do research and you take oat fiber mixtures and concentrations and you look at blood glucose management, for example, and sometimes you will discover because you work in networks, you discover other related things. And at the end of the day, they may not even have anything to do with oats. As in the case of the product and the company I run now here in a startup phase in the US called Good Idea, which it's essentially a discovery at the university by a separate in the University of Lund by a separate research team that 5 amino acids, so-called essential amino acids, meaning that we have to have them in our diet. We need to eat them. Most amino acids that we're using in our body, the body can produce by eating food, right? But there are some that are essential. We need to have them in our diet. And 5 of those amino acids in a very particular concentration and form have an incredible effect of regulating blood sugar. So what that means is that whenever you eat food, right, you get food translates into energy, and energy is transported in the form of glucose in the blood. So whenever you eat food, you get an increased blood sugar level, more glucose in the blood, and then the body would secrete insulin to manage that sugar in the blood and send it to where it's needed to the muscles. And if you have excess glucose, it'll store it in easily loadable fat cells, right? So it sort of stores it there for those days when you don't have food and you need to use your stored energy resources. So the discovery here was that the 5 amino acids helped in that insulin process and improved the ability to level out. So I guess the other aspect here that's important to understand in our metabolic system is that the faster the lower quality food we eat, the faster carbohydrates or sugars, right, the faster the energy gets out into the body and the higher of a blood sugar spike you get. Mm. That's okay if it happens every once in a while. And the caveman went and found this incredible bush of the sweetest fruits on the planet, and you go bonkers and you eat a lot of those, right? And you get, of course, a huge spike of blood sugar. Not a problem. But if that happens repeatedly, daily, from your sugary cereals with breakfast, from your pancakes with lunch, from your rice or sushi with dinner, whatever, and you start getting these incredible spikes that results in fast reductions that starts sugar cravings. I'm not a scientist myself, so it's somewhat of a layman terminology and description, but I think you get the picture, right? You start getting these incredible swings in sugar up and down, and when they're down low, you're tired, you're grumpy and hard to focus, and you get sugar cravings. So you start scrambling around in the pantry for whatever can gives you a sugar rush again. When this happens repeatedly more and more often, the body starts wearing down, and the processes start working suboptimally, and it leads to inflammations, and inflammations start when you have them for a longer period of time, start knocking out systems. The insulin becomes very significantly less efficient in doing what it needs to do. All kinds of other system failures start appear, and you develop diseases like diabetes. You get obese. You have issues with your heart. Because of the blood vessels have a harder time to go through the blood system and whatnot. All that adds up, right? The discovery that we did here is that the 5 amino acids will cut that blood sugar spike by 25% on average.
Wow.
We've done this now in a number of studies, both in-house and through external corporations that done it without our involvement. So we can prove that it really works very efficiently. And so this, again, had nothing to do with oats, but the discovery that this is a very potent way of reducing the blood sugar spikes, hence reducing the inflammatory stress on your system. The short-term benefit is, of course, that you don't get tired after lunch and you don't fall asleep when your boss is having a boring presentation, or when you're in school and sitting through a seminar right after lunch, right?
So where do we find this?
You can buy it today on Amazon or on our own website. We are, since June of this summer, we have started rolling out in a number of supermarkets, predominantly Northern California, but we are spreading in the Midwest too. We got listed by one of the major national distributors called KeHE. So through them, we're getting out to a lot of the independents, smaller supermarkets first, because they can make very quick purchase decisions.
Well, I was just going to ask you, what is it like taking a new product to market, something like this? What does that process and strategy look like? And you said Good Idea has been in the U.S. for how long? 2 years?
No, we launched Good Idea in June.
Oh, okay. Oatly has been 2 years.
Oatly has been 2 years, yeah. And Good Idea, we never launched outside of the U.S. We took it here first. And there are many reasons for that, but it has to do with regulatory aspects. It has to do with the size of the market here, of course. And I think that's another thing. A lot of people back home would think, how can you go to the U.S. first? It's part of that sort of, I guess, risk taking game, but there are many reasons why we, with this particular product, went here first. So how do you go about to do that? Well, that's worthy of 2 or 3 podcasts in its own right. I think the strategy to launch a food product on the market in the U.S. But the very short of it is that you need to identify a corner of the market. You can define that whatever way you want, right? But there's some kind of a niche, a beach that you need to conquer and hold, and prove to the rest of the world that, look here, we're in this subset of the market that I chosen to define this way. I did this, I launched, I got this response, and look here how happy these consumers are, and how good this product is working. And then when you've achieved that proof of concept, then you can start scaling it. And that's also when you quite favorably can raise external funding, for example, to take it to the next level. But you need to do the legwork first yourself. And that's why I'm also running this company and here now. I mean, it fits very well with my personality to be involved in actually managing and running an organization in the early stages. I see myself handing over that leadership role in a year or two to a very different person. I think that can then scale it and be much more operationally skilled than I am and experienced for sure.
What would your advice be to someone, an entrepreneur or innovator who wants to bring a new product to market? Like you said, they need proof of concept first. Do you have any advice around getting to proof of concept before trying to get additional funding?
Well, it's hard to have a general advice, but I think in this day and time in the food industry, when you launch something new, you have to have a very compelling product in its own right and a story behind it. It's so much about storytelling. And I think it's interesting how you can take pretty much any segment today in the food industry and it's going through a premiumization, right? It's sort of, you don't just buy Heinz baked beans anymore. You go and buy the cool dude from Texas with a really cool story of his grandma and, you know, how he's resigned from his 7-digit paid gig as a lawyer in a big fancy law firm and started making this, or whatever the story is.
Yeah.
But it's sort of authenticity, back to the roots. People are concerned. I think the food industry has screwed up in the sense that big time screw up, really, because nobody trusts them. That's a big problem they have. Nobody trusts big food company, fairly or unfairly. I think it's unfair in many ways. I think the bashing of the big food and the big agro companies. I was just at a TEDx conference last night, actually, about the future of food, and there was a lot of that going on. And I have an issue with that. I think it's unfair, and I think it's oversimplifying the problem. That's not the problem we've had with, you know, there are other issues at play. Again, that's another 2 podcasts to dissect that topic in its own right. But a net of it is that today, to come out and be seen, and there never been as many products launched. It's an onslaught of new products in pretty much any category on the market today. I mean, just look at kombucha, for example. How many kombuchas are there out there? And you go to a food show in Anaheim in March, and you probably see 20 new companies that try to launch a kombucha, or nutritional bars, or you know, and or olive oils, or nut spreads, or anything, right? So in order in today's market, you need to engage with the consumers. You need to identify exactly who is your audience and talk to them in their language and communicate with them in a way that resonates with them. And you have to be authentic. You can't just plaster on, let's be cool, and put the sticker on. Oh, now I'm cool because I put this sticker on me, right? No. You have to be cool. You have to be whoever you say you are. You have to be that. That's why, you know, the incumbent companies, it's Coke used to be, you know, the biggest. Some people may still argue it is. I don't know, but it's been the most valuable brand on the planet for years, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't hold true anymore. You have a whole new generation of consumers that, it's Coke. Oh, okay, I'll go the other way then.
Well, you hit on a really good point in the world that we're in today, and especially with millennials taking up such a big portion of the population now. I think if you're not innovating and changing, that the bigger companies, whatever they are, whether it's Coke or Apple, people want things that are more targeted for them as opposed to something that's targeted for everybody. What are you doing that is really speaking to me directly because I'm different and unique from everybody else out there? So you hit on the story piece of it. The story is so much about it. It's something that we preach to our clients all the time. We do a lot of sales training, and something we've been working on with clients is, what is the story your salespeople are telling when they go out? And they can all have a different twist on the story. But what is the story they're telling of your company? And then what is their personal story?
Yeah.
You know, who are they as individuals, right?
Right.
If you're gonna buy me first before you buy my company.
And I think it's interesting. I mean, here I am on a podcast with you, and you're building a brand, right?
Right.
And you're doing your thing. You don't want to associate yourselves with other individual brands that doesn't resonate.
Exactly. And to your point, and it's taken us a while to get to a point of really niching and understanding where we should be focused and who we want to work with and who we don't want to work with. And even for this podcast, which, you know, now listening to you, I want to be more like Bjorn when I grow up. You know, this can spin off, you know, this podcast, part of my thought was it could spin off into its own thing, into its own brand, into its own thing that we can monetize. But even the guests that we bring on the show, as the show has progressed, we've become very particular on who's on the show. And I get so many pitches from PR agencies every day for guests.
Right.
But right. I delete most of them because they don't fit who we are or fit our brand.
Right. No, it's obvious, right? And I see this in a micro form with my 15-year-old daughter, for example, right? I mean, and her tribe, how they share on WhatsApp or whatever app they use, they share pictures all the time. And what pictures do they share? Well, it all is about building their own personal brands in some sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm here with a cool dude. They wouldn't share a picture when they're hanging out with their dad in their backyard. Totally not, right? That doesn't build their brand in that community. So it's all about, we're all becoming our own individual brands in some sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate actually to use the word brand there, but because it's also, in Oatly we talk a lot about the world. Consumers don't want brands. They don't care about brands. They care about something else, values and stories and messages, right? It so happens that you can a message around quote unquote a brand, but at the end of the day, who cares about brands?
Yeah. Well, we have to care about some part of it, right?
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, when you're behind it, it's obviously everything. It's the most important asset you have, right? But it's sort of the nuance here. I think that the parallel goes back to talking to the big food companies again. And then Unilever, they have a whole bunch of quote unquote brands. Magnum, everybody knows what a Magnum is.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the soul of Magnum? Who cares about Magnum, right?
Yeah. I think there's also a difference between like what's in a name. There's the name of a brand and then there's the soul of a brand.
Yeah. And I mean, the big companies are stuck in that they've spent millions of, hundreds of millions over the years through TV commercials and the traditional old school ways of building and establishing these incredible multi-billion-dollar platforms, right? That are just sold as brands today in a market where nobody cares about that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's their biggest problem. So Coke, the value of the brand Coke is dramatically diminished in the eye of certainly the younger generation of consumers, right?
Yeah. This has been so fun talking to you.
Well, thank you. I like it. It's fun.
But we're at the end. It goes by so fast. I think we may have to have other episodes because you have so many things going on. You know what? Maybe you need your own show. Maybe it should be the Bjorn show.
Yeah. I'll borrow my wife's studio. Maybe. Who knows? I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? I'm open. I'm risk taker and take opportunities as they come. But right now I'm kind of busy with my collection of food companies.
Yeah, I think you are. If people want to learn more about you or Good Idea or Oatly or anything relating back to you, what is the best way to connect with you or get a hold of you or your companies?
Well, so it's super easy to reach me through goodideadrinks.com, which is the most prominent persona here in the US right now, I guess. And just email me there, bjorn.oste@goodideadrinks.com. Or, you can look me up on LinkedIn, or there's so many ways to get hold of people, I guess, these days. But I would say that's the easiest way to reach me if you're in the US. And I love to talk to anyone out there that's interested in food industry and health and health properties and how we can work together in the fight against diabetes, for example, which is something we're taking on here with Good Idea Drinks.
Oh, that's great. We will put all that information in the show notes so that people can reach out to you, learn more about you, and hopefully we can sell more of those drinks for you in some way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if we can put that a little offer if you are open for that. I don't know. We
Sure.
haven't talked about this, but I can send you a discount code. So anyone that want to buy Good Idea Drinks can.
Oh, that'd be great. We can put that in the show notes if you want to.
Yeah.
If you want to email that to me.
Yeah, I'll send that to you, and you can feel free to spread it to your audience. And we'll like you to try it. It's a sparkling flavored water. It comes in 3 flavors. It's very tasty. People love it. Again, my 15-year-old daughter and her army of friends, they love it. Which is when we saw that, we figured, okay, we're good. We can launch this. And you can drink it anytime, but if you drink it with your food, you'll definitely notice that you are much more awake and alert afterwards, less of a sugar craving, and long term, it is really healthy for you.
Well, I'm excited to try it. I think you guys are going to be really successful at it. So best of success. Go ahead and send that to me. And then for those listening, we'll put that in the show notes with the code so that you can go and purchase that as well. And Bjorn, thank you again for being on the Pivotal Leader today.
Well, thank you so much. It was fun.
Oh, good. We're going to sign out from this show. So thanks again, everybody, for listening.
You've been listening to The Pivotal Leader with Gina Trimarco, owner and founder of Pivot 10 Results and Carolina Improv Company. You can find show notes for this episode on our website at thepivotalleader.com. The Pivotal Leader is a production of Pivot 10 Results, a strategy and training company that helps businesses shift from people problems to performance results. If your company needs help pivoting to success, visit pivot10results.com or email Gina at pivot10results.com. And until next time, if you're feeling stuck in your business, it's probably time to pivot.